All right. So before I introduce Katie and Mark, our special guests today, I want to mention that this webinar is brought to you by eCatholic. eCatholic is the engagement platform of the Catholic Church, and we serve over 7,000 parishes, dioceses, schools, and ministries with easy-to-use, effective, and integrated communication tools. eCatholic offers easy-to-build websites with powerful features designed with parishes in mind. We also offer intuitive online giving to unlock generosity from your flock. We also have payments and registration solutions for any group event, for any event. We also have group messaging with the ability to add unlimited groups and members to that system. We have live streaming and up to 4K resolution and robust church management software that actually helps you make sense of your parishioner data. Wow, that's quite a bit. If you're a parish or Catholic organization looking to more effectively communicate with your flock, take a look at eCatholic. So many parishes have an ineffective and expensive mix of different communication tools that aren't integrated and frankly are outdated. eCatholic exists only to serve the church and has helped thousands of parishes and ministries evangelize more effectively and efficiently. Learn more at ecatholic.com or email us at sales@ecatholic.com. Today, we are going to discuss a brand new parish program from Paradisus Dei and designed for women called She Shall Be Called Woman. We have two very special guests joining us today. Mark Hartfiel is the Vice President of Paradisus Dei. For 2 decades, Mark has worked tirelessly to help thousands of men recognize their calling as authentic leaders in their marriages and families through the That Man Is You men's program. Mark is the developer and host of That Man Is You. Katie Hartfiel has worked in youth ministry, authored several books, and has served as a Steubenville Youth Conference speaker for more than 10 years. If you haven't guessed it yet, Katie is Mark's wife and homeschools their 4 children. Katie is the founder of She Shall Be Called Woman, which we'll be discussing today. Katie and Mark, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mike. We're excited to be here and share with the eCatholic community.
Excellent. Well, as I was preparing for this webinar, I found a video of how you two met, and I think it's an amazing story, shows God's grace. Do you guys mind briefly recounting that story?
Sure. When I was in high school, I was really I was like a youth group rat, into all of the parish ministries and all of that sort of thing. And I was at a youth conference. It was actually a leadership week, and felt really convicted that the Lord had a plan for me, had a plan for my vocation, a best way for me to get to heaven, and really praying with that over the course of that week. Just asking that if I was called to marriage, and God knew who I would marry one day, that the Lord would bless that man wherever he was, and praying specifically for his conversion. So I became really convicted in that, started writing letters to my future husband, praying for him on a regular basis. Went home from that leadership week, like so on fire for the Lord, but also right afterwards, my family fell apart. My parents got divorced. A lot of pain and darkness within that of like, really, does God have a plan? Like, can this be, that the Lord is going to be able to do something different in my life. So several years pass, go to college, end up meeting a tall, dark, handsome young man from Texas. And so we started dating. Long story short, deep into our dating relationship, we're on the phone one night talking about Mark's conversion. I don't know if you want to give like a very brief.
Sure. Just very briefly, my high school experience was a lot different than Katie's. I wasn't going to all the youth conferences and praying for my future spouse and things like that. I was going to church on Sundays. Thanks be to God. God was very important in my life. At the same time, I mean, that stage of life was more like sports, which for me was basketball. And where's the party this weekend? It was that type of scene and culture and lifestyle that I was living, going to church on Sunday, and the rest of my days were the typical average high school kid, right? So what happened to me is the summer between high school and college, I had a massive conversion. And I wasn't at a youth group. I wasn't in prayer. There was no altar call from a priest telling me what to do. It was literally I was showering one summer night. And the only way I can describe the experience is just the Holy Spirit just entered into the place and the space and convicted me, pierced my heart with a deep truth that I'd heard a million times before, right? God loves you. Like, we've all heard that. My mom would tell us every day. But it was like I experienced the depths of it, that Christ died for me. It was my sins that were the hammer and the nails that took his life. And so I literally fell to my knees and wept, my sins racing through my head, tears of sorrow and contrition for sure, but also overwhelmingly, I feel like I tasted the goodness of God, the mercy of God. And so, yes, there was sorrow and a desire to transform, but it was a joy. It was this one moment with God was like a taste of heaven. It was better than anything the world could offer me, that I thought my life was good, experiencing all these things of what the world tells you is good things. And I enjoyed those things in those moments. And they were all nothing, right? As St. Paul says, it's all loss and rubbish compared to knowing Christ. And so before I went to bed that night, a definitive decision to give my life to Christ. I didn't know what that meant. I did know there's a handful of things I needed to stop doing, like definitively. And I knew there's a handful of things I needed to start doing. And that started down the path that I'm still on to this day, right? Of continual conversion. But that was definitely a moment where I knew, because of the nature of it too, that someone somewhere must have been praying for me. And that's where Katie will continue with the story of how we kind of sorted all this out.
So we were talking on the phone about this story and about, I know, which I had heard lots of times before, but for one particular reason, I was at home in Colorado, where I'm originally from. Mark's here in Texas, and asked him, do you know the exact date of this conversion? So he tells me the date in July. I go over to my bookshelf where I kept all my prayer journals, pulled them out and started reading. And the week of his conversion was the same week that I was at this leadership week, the same week that I decided that I was going to go to war, praying specifically for the conversion of my future husband, if needed. And I had a laundry list, like if he's struggling with this, and this, and it was word for word, Mark's list. So we share the story. I mean, especially when I do youth ministry things with teens and stuff, I share the story a lot, but not because it's our love story and we really like it, but really, like, this is what our God does. And he does it millions of times every single day, that he's listening and he's moving. And this was one time that he chose to show us, that he was intimately involved within that time.
Yeah, it's so beautiful and so much fun when you can put your finger on dates like that and really see the Holy Spirit moving. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing. And I think it probably, is the undertone for so much of the work that you guys do together now, which is awesome. So as we dive into the webinar, can you tell us a little bit more about Paradisus Dei and your mission there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's a good question. I've been at Paradisus Dei for like 20 years. I was the first employee and worked out of our founder's house, is Steve Bowman, for like the first 6 years on a fold-out table and a fold-out chair. So that's our humble beginnings. And first, just to start, before even getting into the mission, like the name itself kind of reveals the mission. So where's Paradisus Dei come from? Actually, if you look back in Genesis, the Garden of Eden, that word garden, the Greek is paradisio. So it was a paradise. The word garden could be translated paradise in Eden. Same words used in the book of Revelation to describe the heavenly Jerusalem, the new heavens and the new earth. And so God planted a paradise of Eden. And that was his intention from the very beginning, is man, woman, together with God in perfect harmony, perfect union. And what makes paradise is the presence of God, right? That's what's going to make heaven, heaven. And then perfect communion with one another, man and woman, and all of creation, right? This perfect harmony and union without sin. That's paradise. And we know the story, right? Adam and Eve, the fall of mankind, sin enters in the world. And God places a cherub angel with a sword to block, quote, the way to the tree of life, the way to paradise. So paradise is blocked. And so all of salvation history now is this story that's unfolding where we've been banned from paradise, so to speak. And we live in this strife in this fallen world, and Christ comes to restore. So as Christ dies on the cross and the opening of his heart, paradise is restored. And so this union between man and woman and our pathway to heaven has all been restored for us. And so his intention from the beginning, again, with man and woman, is this perfect union. Our mission at Paradisus Dei and our vision is God's vision for humanity. That even in the midst of a fallen world, that we want to help families discover Christ's presence in the midst of their union, in their spousal union, their relationship with their children, and that our homes truly become a foretaste of paradise. Our homes truly become the domestic church where Christ is present. He's always present if we have the eyes and ears mystically and spiritually to see it. And so with that, it's really a family ministry where we're helping families enter into what we would call the spirit of Nazareth, because the Holy Family experienced this. The Holy Family experienced the presence of Christ all day, every day. They could wake up and Joseph and Mary could say, "Good morning, God." And so to become like the Holy Family, we too have to experience Christ's presence in our homes, which that's going to transform the world. That's what's going to transform the church, one family at a time. And it starts in our hearts. And so within this mission field of the family, Paradisus Dei has, a big playing field where we can work with men and we can work with women. We can work with them individually and we can work with them together. And even in Genesis, if you really look at it, if you want to read it in this way, God started with a men's program. like Adam in his original solitude before Eve enters the stage, God had to walk Adam through a divine lesson, right? And this is what God walks men through today with our program, That Man Is You. It's the same divine lesson. Like Adam had sensual pleasure. He had every tree to behold that was pleasant to the eye and good for food. So the senses, right? He had dominion. Whatever he named was its name. That's the ultimate power and dominion. You get to name the thing. That's such a manly thing as well. And then he had success and achievement. He was already called to till and work the garden before the fall. So work is good. Work is from God. And he had that success. And yet in all three of these things, his heart wasn't satisfied, right? His heart was still longing for something more. And so God's trying to show him, yes, I've given you all these things and all these things are good and they're for you, but they're not enough, right? And then that's when God, he grieves for the man. It is not good for the man to be alone. And he calls him to this deep sleep, and out of his rib, which is an enclosure of the heart. So it's out of the heart of man, together with God, comes woman, right? And she's the fulfillment. She's the fulfillment of his heart's desire. She's the fulfillment of creation. She's the masterpiece of creation. And in this moment, when woman comes on the scene, we have the first expression of joy in all of creation, in all of Scripture. The man says, "At last, this one is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man." And so we have a ministry focused on the family, but it entails man as man, woman as woman, and we have ministries for the couple together as well. Mm-hmm. That's the big picture overview.
Sure. And we are definitely going to get into She Shall Be Called Woman, of course, during this webinar. But also, just to give your pitch to parishes, could you talk about the success and the results that you've seen from That Man Is You and how it's transformed a number of parishes across the country?
Yeah, absolutely. So this fall, That Man Is You will be hosted in over 900 parishes. We're really excited about that. It's been 20 years. We're into our 20th year. That's been all word of mouth. Mm-hmm. Parishes hosting it, other parishes seeing it, men getting excited and sharing. So it'll be close to 40,000 men meeting every single week. 26 weeks out of the year. We have 13 weeks in the fall, 13 weeks in the spring. We provide the parish with everything. It's a program in a box, so to speak. So this is really good partnership with parishes listening to this call. Your parish can host That Man Is You. You just need a pastor approval and a core team. And we give you everything and every tool to host this at your parish for 26 weeks. We have 10 years of material on the shelf, so we have you covered. We're not like a one and done ministry. We will accompany these men indefinitely.
And it's free.
Everything we do is free. It's just donation appeals within it to the people who are attending. So yeah, and I think the greatest fruit, to sum it up, there's so many fruits, but the heart of the fruits are more and more men becoming like St. Joseph, right? St. Joseph was a man after God's own heart. He's the spouse of Mary. He's the father of Jesus. We read in Malachi, the great prophet before the New Testament comes, He says, before the great and terrible day of the Lord, I will turn the hearts of fathers to their children and the hearts of children to their fathers. This is what we see time and time again with That Man Is You, is men come in, the average guy in the pew who's probably thinking more about football on Sunday than his family or the liturgy of the Eucharist. And those men come in, and I think what they discover is a new vision for family. I think they see a new vision for God as Father, for their own fatherhood, and they're transformed into seeing their marriage as a vocation and a calling. Like, you're the only man chosen for your spouse. You are the only man chosen for your children, and to find themselves in that calling, to find meaning and purpose and dignity. JP2 says, men reveal and relive on earth the very fatherhood of God. Wow. That's what I think these men kind of come to see as their dignity and their calling. And what does that change? It changes everything. So rather than go through, okay, they stop looking at pornography, or they start going to confession more, or they start reading the scriptures more, they start going to daily mass more, all those things happen, right? But the heart of it is their hearts are transformed. They want to be like little St. Joseph's in their home. And they begin to see that's what's going to transform the world. That's what's going to transform the family. That's what's going to transform the church.
Yeah. So That Man Is You now has been running for a decade, which is amazing. Katie, tell us about She Shall Be Called Woman and what inspired you to create this program. Also, what was the thinking behind starting with the men's program and then moving into creating a parish program designed for women?
Well, Steve Bowman, when he started That Man Is You and started Paradisus Dei as a whole, he always felt a call to couples and marriage ministry, men and women, all of these things, and kind of got backed into the men's program. So there was a big non-denominational men's group here in Houston, and a ton of the men that were going there were from our parish, from our Catholic church. And so they came to him like, I know you want to start this thing for couples and this ministry, but this is what we need. This is what we need. So he very reluctantly started with That Man Is You, and kind of dabbled a little bit in a women's program. Also, I was a youth minister at the parish where they started That Man Is You also. So it was, obviously behind the scenes, and also been very formed within Paradisus Dei. Mark started working here like 6 months after we got married. So even our entire marriage and adult life has been very formed by this kind of spirituality. So probably like 10 years ago, I was not working in the parish anymore, but still doing some speaking and things like that with youth ministry, and just really felt like the Lord in prayer one day was like, one day you're going to do the women's program. And I was like, what? Like, no, I don't even know where I would start. Like, that sounds great. It sounds really exciting, but this must have just been like in my own, weird thought that popped into my head or something. But it was something that kept coming up in prayer for me over many, many years. But small children at home. And again, like, I do youth ministry. Like, I don't even know where I would start with women. But over the last probably 5 years, I've had a lot more opportunities, especially as our kids have gotten older. I'm doing a lot of like mother-daughter different events, a lot more women's conferences, mothers groups, things like that. And I've really loved it and gotten to know so many other women in ministry through all of those things. And so just a lot of things aligned this year for it to kind of be time for it to all come together. So we've been just really excited about how all of the doors have been opening and things falling into place, and bringing in these different women speakers and seeing, I think like kind of a theme over the year as it's all come together is like, it's happening. It's happening. Like, this is finally happening. And all across the board, I think in the office, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. This is really, really a thing. It's really going to happen. So we're so excited about it as a whole.
What are some of the topics parishes can look forward to She Shall Be Called Woman covering?
Yeah, so we have 2 9-week seasons that are done, and our goal is to produce 2 9-week seasons every year. So we brought in different speakers, and each of them gave one talk for each of the seasons. So our first semester is called Masterpiece of Creation. It's really foundational of what it is to be called woman. So we have theology of the body, we have feminine genius, really identity of what it is to be called, to belong to the Lord. And then also a lot of we have theology and we're speaking to the heart, but also like practically speaking. So we have a therapist, Jordan Langdon, who talks about like, okay, if we believe all of these things within our identity, we want to integrate it. Well, it's a head game. So what do we do practically speaking in order to be able to reconfigure our mind, to be able to think like a Christian? We talk like a Christian, we act like a Christian. What is it like to think like a Christian? What are the areas within our homes, within our marriages, within our parenting? But then also I have two speakers that are not married, one that's a religious sister, one that's single, in her 30s. What does this look like for you, in your own life also? So that's our first semester, a lot of femininity. And then our second semester is the 10 virtues of Mary. So we're looking at the woman par excellence. And St. Louis de Montfort, he lists these 10 virtues of the Blessed Mother, and you could look at them and be like, oh my gosh, it's so admirable that she has all of these virtues. But actually, they're virtues that are possible for us and that we need if we really want to be holy. So all of our speakers broke down all of these different virtues and talking about how we can bring them into our lives, again, spiritually through our hearts, but also practically within our lives as well. So we're super excited about that content. And then as years go on, also, we're kind of like in the beginning stages of working out all of the content for what we're going to be able to put together next year. But kind of in that same vein, not always harping on the same thing of like, let's talk about the beauty of women, for years and years and years. But what are these other areas of our lives that the Lord really wants to breathe life into and to bring his love into the world?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of speakers. Could you get more into who else you have lined up? And I know people can go to the website to also see who's involved, but anybody you're particularly excited for?
Yeah. So what was super cool for me, having been in ministry for all of these years, was I got to pick who I was going to call, and specifically like choosing women that I had heard specific things from that I had benefited so much personally, and then being able to say like, I can't wait for other people to get to hear from those women as well. So we have Alicia Hernan, whose Messy Family Project. She's has 10 kids, half of them out of the home, half of them still in the home. So she has a really great perspective on a lot of things. We have Sister Alexia Zaldivar, who's a religious sister, Madi Pablo, who is a speaker, who speaks a lot across youth ministry, women's things as well. Sarah Swafford's a very dear friend of mine. Lisa Cotter, who is very well-versed, incredibly well-versed in the feminine genius period. And as I mentioned, Jordan Langdon, who is a therapist from Colorado as well. I think, is that everybody? I think that's.
Hope so.
Yeah. And Mark has.
Oh, yeah. I do
Mark
one
does
song.
one at the end, which
Yeah.
is new and different for him. And then I also have a couple of sessions in there as well.
Right.
So.
Excellent. And all our parishes can go fact check Mark and Katie, because the speakers are listed out on the website. Braden, you can, if you don't mind, throw that up there real quick so people can jot that down. We'll also mention this, of course, at the end of the webinar. Katie, who did you have in mind for this webinar? Are there specific age ranges? Is it for all women?
Yeah, so this was something I felt really strongly about. There's so many different women's groups, which are all so beautiful and have such an intentionality about where we are, whether that's ladies club or mom's group or Simcoe's group, things like that. But in my time in youth ministry, now a lot of my teens are now like late 20s, early 30s. Some of them are single, some of them have young families, and we try to get together with them a couple times a year. And I'm just always so blessed by how much I receive from them. And also, what I'm able to still be able to walk with them in those categories. And when I was at the parish also, I had all of these core team members that were just a little bit ahead of me in parenting and in life in general, who were it was just such a huge part of my life to have them be able to walk with me. So my vision and my hope is that this will be an area that women of any state of life, of any age, will be able to come and to be able to receive, but also be able to give and to be able to have community, to have great spiritual conversations, to be able to pray with one another, to be able to pray for one another. So that really is the vision. And that was something that I really harped on a lot when we were bringing in the speakers also, that these messages, yes, like there is things about marriage and there is things about family, but these are universal truths, right? That the Lord, I think, wants to bring healing and goodness into our life, that we all need, and that we can walk with one another in that area. So that really is the goal and the hope of this program.
Yeah, you mentioned healing. I think especially today, we all see and experience so much anxiety, a loss of identity, just goes hand in hand with living in today's world. How will she inspire women and help them find their true identity in Jesus and experience that healing that Jesus wants for them?
Yes. So that's really the core, I would say, of what especially our first season is all about, is recognizing our identity in the Lord. That when we can look at all the different attacks in our culture and in our world, I think oftentimes when we see that the devil's in a frenzy about something, we kind of have to step back and say, like, what's really going on? And I believe firmly, like, there's all of these symptoms and all of these manifestations, but really what the actual attack is on our identity of belonging to the Lord as his. And I heard this phrase many years ago: our behavior will flow from our identity, that how we see ourselves is actually going to affect everything about our lives. And so our identity, the way that we see ourselves, is actually maybe one of the biggest portions. I think the most important thought we have in our life is who God is, and the second is who we are, and everything else is going to flow from that. And so if we want to be holy, this is really where we have to start. So we spend a lot of time with that in our talks, but then also we have a devotional, an optional devotional for participants to buy if they would like to go through the program and just take 10 minutes a day of letting the Lord speak into all of those areas. So really praying and hoping that God's going to do really big, beautiful healing things throughout this program.
Yeah, I want to dive a little bit deeper into discovering the meaning of femininity, and why is this especially important today? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I heard recently, I was listening to a talk of actually a non-denominational speaker. She made this point that I really loved. She said, like, when we look at the scriptures of what Jesus talks about, how he's coming back for a bride. And if he's coming back for a bride, what that means is that our understanding of who woman is not only important for us, but it's important for the entire world. Like, if there's things that we need to be able to understand about ourselves and portray and bring Jesus into the world in order for the world to understand who we all are, for us to understand who the church is, all of these different things. And so, perhaps now more than ever, there's more and more confusion about what that means. And I think one of my favorite moments of that within the program, and we've talked about this a lot ourselves, is Lisa Cotter. Again, she talks about the feminine genius, and she does it so beautifully, just about what you would traditionally think of as like being feminine and being, girly or whatever, versus like all of the gamut of things that are personality traits or characteristics or whatever that are still feminine genius. But what is the whole picture of what it is to be a woman? And that it's just, I think it comes across so beautifully and Mark said it like actually so well. I loved it. Like you could go ahead.
I mean, one of my favorite parts, like if I were given the program, or Steve and I or something like that, we could speak about the feminine genius. And John Paul II did as much, so beautifully, right? It's one thing to speak about it. It's another thing to see it in flesh. And as these women were speaking, the overflow of the heart, the mouth will speak. You can see and feel and experience the feminine genius, like with your sight and your senses. And that's one of the things, the intangibles I love so much about. It's a program for women by women. And these women are sharing their experience, and you're seeing their feminine genius on display, right? And all their various different states of life and how they bring that into the world in their different roles. So it's not like feminine genius just points to one thing. Mm-hmm. It's not simply motherhood, right? It's all the full gamut of giving of your heart to others. They explain it better than I do. Don't worry. But it's all in there, and it's really beautiful, and it's so very Marian. So yeah, thanks be to God.
There are so many parish programs out there today, it seems. What sets she apart, and how is this not just another parish program?
Yeah, I wanted to be really intentional about not just trying to recreate something else that's already out there. So, again, like the content obviously like is the sharing of heart, but even the setup is you come in, you have some social time, you have 20 to 25 minutes of a talk, which we're also trying to be intentional about. Like, let's give more time for discussion, therefore, in small group. And I think something that Mark has always said about That Man Is You, like, you have a mix. Like, some guys do come for the content, but mostly what happens is people really have, maybe for the first time ever, like this real authentic, vulnerable space to be able to have spiritual friendships and to be able to share of your heart and to feel so uplifted. So I foresee that being, that community aspect being one of the biggest portions. We give them something really good to talk about and some things that are going to be able to come up within that. And then to be able to develop those relationships, but then also, again, that devotional aspect, really hoping that the Lord is going to be the main speaker of the series, that he's going to do more talking and more moving than anybody else is going to do so. And with that devotional aspect, just talking to a lot of friends and different ministry experiences, like, some people really want to go and to learn and to have a workbook and to have like homework and things that you do over the course of the week, or a book club or something like that. And a lot of women also like desire that, but then don't necessarily like have time to do the work, or they forget to do the work, or it falls through the cracks and they show up at the next meeting and they're like, oh, I don't know if I should come. I don't know, whatever. So if there is someone that wants that and wants to like dive deeper in those areas, 10 minutes a day, like, hopefully really, really accessible and that, but then also, like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Show up, come. Like, the God is going to continue to move into work in all of those different ways. And so hopefully offering like a little bit of everything of these like desires of our heart for there to be offerings within that.
Yeah. In our short history with we've shown a couple like private screenings and such. And what we've heard from the women already, their response has been, this feels like a lot of things that they are asked to do. And these are women who've been a part of lots of things in which they are loved and they're grateful for. But they said this feels different, like it's for us. It's for us to come receive and just be enriched spiritually, where you're not asking us to do all these things or make all these new commitments. You're just trying to fill our hearts and remind us who we are, and then do that in community. I think that's maybe a distinction, what I've heard so far. And then secondly, just Paradisus Dei programming in general. One of the things I think that makes us unique, most of our staff is made up of what we call a program coordination team. So we're not a product off a shelf that you purchase and we go away. Like, our team, literally any parish who runs this, they're going to be assigned a specific person from our team that walks with them along the way, from tell me about this, how do I get people to show up? They're there to answer any questions. They're one phone call away. They have a name and a face. And so one of the things Paradisus Dei is built on is we see ourselves as a service to the parish, to partner with the parish. So we're like behind the scenes. The core team is the boots on the ground, and we're behind the scenes trying to give them everything they can do and have, and all the resources and tools to go be disciples in their parish communities. And we're simply here to serve that. And that's what we've heard for 20 years in That Man Is You, is you guys give us everything. You're there for us all the time with any question we have, advice we have, feedback we have. And so I also think that's a distinction factor. If you're a parish deciding to host this, we are with you every single step of the way.
Mm-hmm. And so getting into practicalities, you sort of hinted at this, but for parishes familiar with the format of That Man Is You, how will things compare? Is it very similar? Is there a slight different aspect that you guys took? I know, Katie, you just sort of explained that, but could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's very similar in the same vein, again, with some tweaks. Our talks are shorter for more time for discussion. And then our weeks, we have 9 weeks instead of 13 weeks, and really hoping that you can start after the craziness of September and be done before holidays. Kind of the same thing in the spring. Start once everybody's in a groove, be done before April and May eat us all alive. And so really hoping that it's accessible in those kind of ways. But other than that, it's pretty much the same format.
Yeah, it's 3 parts. You show up, doors open, and you've got a little fellowship piece. And then you have a video that starts at a particular time, and then you break into small groups. So it's fellowship, content, small group, and then you break.
Also, just practically, she spans 2 seasons. We have fall and spring, as you mentioned earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about the themes for fall and spring, and why were these themes chosen?
Yeah, so the first one being masterpiece of creation. So really giving kind of like the intro, and actually, so I started with that topic on what Steve had put together in this booklet that he had written for women. So again, very foundational of what it is, and then turning to our Blessed Mother for her examples for the second semester as well. So really hoping to like give this great big springboard of what it is to be called woman.
Yeah, and the idea behind we're poised to try to create 2 additional 9 weeks seasons every single year. And so if you just fast forward a few years from now, even just 3 years from now, we should have 6 seasons available with all sorts of different topics. So the current vision is some women that will probably always start with like what they should do for season 1, very foundational. But then after that, most likely there'll be a day where the women get to choose this topic versus that topic. What is our group craving for, hungering for, desiring for? And over time, you really get to build out all different aspects of where women are and what their desires to hear about, combined with this always underlying this kind of Paradisus Dei message of the family. Because that's our call as Paradisus Dei. So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the programs will really complement one another, which is great. So very practically speaking, you again have already spoken about this, but want to reiterate or ask again, what resources and material do you provide to parishes who want to bring She Shall Be Called Women to their parish community?
Yeah. A whole host of things. I was kind of thinking like just like eCatholic, and you guys have all the things going on there. So yeah, I mean, Paradisus Dei provides you your greatest asset is the program coordinator, a person who actually will help you along the way. But we have an email written for every week. We have a database where you can sign your people up and get them registered. We have QR codes that go straight to your class. We have posters, banners, trifold brochures, registration cards, T-shirts, polo shirts, everything that you could think of. We have a leader's guide, a manual that you can walk through, training videos that you can walk through. Some people get overwhelmed with how we've already thought of everything. Other people are like, this is the greatest thing ever. All I have to do is follow the checklist. What I try to remind people is, because all the content is created, it's plug and play. The 2 greatest things a program has, you could sum up the entire manual and everything else in 2 steps. If you're like in a haste to like, how can I get this started? There's so many things on the checklist. Get women there. That's step 1. Keep them coming back. It's kind of like throwing a dinner party. What do you need? You need people to show up and you need food, and everything else will kind of happen, right? And you do your best to manage all the logistics and clean the house and provide them a great atmosphere. But we've already created the content, right? So you just have to find the way to bring the women there, which is, by the way, is not very hard with women. It's harder with men. Women are going to share. They're going to talk about this. And so that's a great thing. Word of mouth is going to spread. Get women there, keep them coming back. So it's the excellence in invitation and then excellence in experience, providing a very hospitable, welcoming environment. That's the key. Every other logistic revolves around those 2 things.
And we mentioned the first season of She kicks off this fall, which is coming up. If parishes act fast, is there still an opportunity to bring She to their parish?
Absolutely. I think the latest you could start is early October.
Okay.
So like late September to early October, which is plenty of time from now. Get that pastor's approval, get a few ladies on the core team. I've seen in the years of that manage you, sometimes when you're in the last minute, we've had really great programs because it's like, go, let's go right now. We don't have the time to discern indefinitely about all the different things. Let's just act, right? And then they have incredible programs. So I think actually right now is a really good time. We're still in mid-August. You've got a good 6 weeks, to talk to your pastor, You need to get his approval quickly. Get a few ladies on the core team. Maybe ask the pastor if he knows of a few ladies. The key ingredient, if you have his approval, is just 1 or 2 ladies saying yes. It's the same for the men. If you have so here's how leadership works. 1 or 2 people going for it, it's easy to find a few followers to help, right? It's harder to like, oh my gosh, I have to garner the whole core team. We have to get this consensus. It's hard to get 6, 8 people to say yes together. If they see leadership, this is what the parish is doing, this is what we're going to do, people will follow. They follow leaders who are convicted in something. And so 1 or 2 people saying, this is where God's calling, this is where we're going, the group will come together. You'll be off to the races.
And so if parishes are very interested from this call, I know we just barely scratched the surface, and they want to learn more about learn more about bringing it to their parish, where can they go? Where's the best place for them to visit?
She Shall Be Called Woman website, or the paradisusdei.org website. Paradisus Dei has men's program, That Man Is You. We have the women's program, She. We have a program called Mysteries of the Rosary that you can do. We have all sorts of offerings for parishes, and they're all free. So go to that website. You can navigate around. We have a new website launching in about a month or so. But yeah, and then call us or email us. We have a program coordination team standing by, waiting to take your call and to help you get this process started. Because at the end of the day, you do have to get in contact with one of our program coordinators to make it happen. So that's the key. Go to the website, find our phone number, give us a phone call.
Excellent. That's easy enough. And I'm hearing it's no cost. You guys provide everything. Seems like a no-brainer.
It's free. It's free. It's all free, and it's free to the participants. What we always started, the philosophy of our whole ministry, is what Christ has given freely. We give what you've received freely, give freely. And so we call that a grace-filled relationship. Grace comes free. We don't earn grace. There's nothing you can do to earn it. And so we give freely. We ask the parish to give to their participants freely. And then we have a free will offering. Like, if this program has impacted your spiritual life, please respond in kind. Right. And be generous. And so we do that once a semester, just to the participants. It's not like a parish-wide appeal or anything like that. And if they choose so, and we don't treat parishes differently based on their appeals. We have parishes who literally do the appeals and don't give us anything back. And we have parishes who are extremely generous. And so it's all free.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. We did have a few questions that came through. Great to see such great engagement from our parishes. So we'll get to a few of those, but I did want to remind everyone that we did record this webinar. So if you want to come back and watch it or share it with your parish priest, or whatever you want to do with it, we will send it out. It's certainly not lost on me that we are recording this live. We're doing this live here on the eve of the Feast of the Assumption. So I think that's beautiful. So if we don't get to sending out the recording tomorrow, we will try. But if we don't get to it, we'll certainly send it out by Friday. So everyone who registered, even if you had to leave or if you just want to watch it again, we will definitely be sharing that with you all. Thanks again, Mark and Katie, for joining. And if you don't mind sticking around a couple extra minutes, we'll ask some of the questions that came through.
Absolutely.
So Deborah asks, how many are needed for the core team?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the size of your parish. I think you probably want to have 4 to 6, as a nice number. You can have more, right? You can absolutely have more. You can have 8, you can have 10, you could have 12. Our core team manual is going to break down the different roles and responsibilities. And they're simple. They're things you would naturally think of, like a hospitality coordinator, someone making sure the experience is nice, a registration coordinator, make sure someone to send out the emails, things like that, right? But 4 to 6 is a really nice spot that you can feel comfortable with moving forward. And then adding more is great, because core team leaders sometimes end up being table leaders. So then it's variable based on the size of your program. If you get 100 women to show up, you may need 10 table leaders. Not a bad idea to have them on the core team. And the other thing is, with advertising, we say the greatest way to bring people to the program, men or women, whether it's a men, is personal invitation, right? So each person on your core team, I would say their primary role is to go tell everybody about it. right? And we call that, you want to create a buzz, right? You want to seed the parish with personal invitations, word of mouth invites before they ever see a bulletin insert or a nice poster or a pop-up, before they receive a trifold brochure. And then the personal invitation's happening, there's communication happening, and then they see something nice and they're like, wow, this looks really nice. I think I'll sign up for that.
Something that I love that they say too is that your core team should look like your program, and it should look like your parish. So if you really are trying to reach women of all these different states of life, like make sure that that's what your core team looks like as well. So have a young mom, have somebody that's single, have somebody that's an empty nester, we can tend, I think, in these kind of situations to like go to your own friend group, which is probably like the same ladies that are doing all the other volunteer things in all the other areas of the parish. But ask around and ask your pastor, like, who are the people that are maybe movers and shakers in these other areas as well that might want to be involved.
Yeah. One of the things we hear in That Man Is You is, I wish I would have heard this 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I feel the same is going to happen with the women's program is people are going to receive this information and say, man, I wish I would have had this when I first got married. I wish I would have heard this when I had young kids in the house. I wish I would have heard this when I was in college. With that information should change our actions too. And so one thing we would encourage, with the core team being the face of your program, we've noticed in our registration and just who's sitting in the pews at Mass, the more, and That Man Is You, like the more mature men, the older men are going to show up anyway, naturally. We got to work harder to get the young men there who are busy, who have kids, who are working on their careers. And it's probably going to be somewhat of the same dynamic with the women is you want to target that actively parenting mom, because this is critical time with the formation of her children. All of our time is critical time. So whether you're an actively parent, and actively parenting is a relative term, you're still actively parenting if you're 85 years old, probably, right? And you have children and grandchildren. So it is for everyone, but you want your core team to be the face of your program. You got to work a little harder on the marketing side to get those younger women there, to make that impact on them while they have their young kids in the house, and potentially save their marriages, right? We hear from the guys, That Man Is You has saved tons and tons of marriages. And actually there's more children in the world today because of it. Saving marriages, people becoming open to life. And so this will be true for the women as well.
That leads into our next question. Great. This is from Julie. That Man Is You is hosted very early on Saturday mornings in our parish. Thanks, Julie, for having That Man Is You at your parish. Is there a recommended time to host She?
So this is going to be, I think, our biggest thing we're going to learn this year.
That's the $1 million question.
Yes, but there are, there's a whole different dynamic. They're not encouraging people to have it early in the morning. I'll tell you that. That's not, a lot of my friends when we first said we were doing this, they're like, don't let them do it at 6 a.m. That's not going to work. And so I think a lot of parishes are doing evening programs because that is more of a catch-all for everybody. But there are also parishes that are running it once in the evening and once during the day, having two separate programs, two separate core teams, so that you kind of have like the woman who's in the workplace and the stay-at-home mom and all these different aspects of different things going on. So that is an option as well.
And Katie had a few questions in the chat. She did ask if there was a cost, which you guys had mentioned. It's completely free. You guys provide those resources. And she also asked, is there someone at Paradisus Dei we can speak with at a later date, one-on-one, for more information about both the men's and women's programs? Mark, you mentioned the coordinators that are standing by right now.
Yeah, and both of these are good questions. The one cost that is involved is the parish's discernment on how much they want to market with physical materials. So we can't cover the cost of everyone's trifold brochures and bulletin inserts and pop-up banners and registration cards and shirts and stuff like that. So there's a variable cost in there if the parish would like to get the printout. We also provide the digital files for all this, once again, for free. So we're not trying to make money. It's just passing on the quality of the materials to the parish. There's a potential cost there. It's a pass-through cost. And then the question on the one-on-one conversation, absolutely. We have 7 program coordinators standing by. They all have different regions of the country and international as well. So if you reach out to Paradisus Dei via email or phone call and say, I want more information about she, or that man is you,
they'll talk to you right now.
You'll get a reply. There's a lot of demand at the moment, but you will get a reply. They're working around the clock. That's what most of our office does full time, is at service to the parish and to answer their questions.
Mark and Katie, thanks again for joining us today. Are there any final thoughts you want to leave or everyone who's joined today with?
Yeah, just thank you for listening. And really, I think bringing this to your parish is a calling from God. And so it's a prayer and a discernment. And what I would just say is, when God calls you to do something, just like Our Lady, we try to say yes. And when we say yes, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it will be fruitful. And so if God is calling, the most practical way you could ever respond is to say yes to his call, and you won't be disappointed. You won't outdo him in generosity, and it will be incredibly fruitful. And there's nothing better in life to participate in the work of God and to share in his own fruitfulness in this way. And at the beginning of something, like this is the first year we're offering she, not only will it be for your parish, but in most cases, there will be women who come from other parishes that then bring it to their parish. And so the ripple effect of our yeses is profound, especially at the start of something. And so if God is calling, I want to encourage the ladies out there to respond like Our Lady did with a fiat, and give their yes to God, and let him work through you in this way. And beautiful things will come.
And to just know that we're praying for all of you. And if this is something that's on your heart, I think it's a really beautiful thing. They meet in prayer several times in their chapel here at Paradisus Dei every single day. And I love like the program coordinators come in and they're like, I have a core team leader in Wyoming who is, asking for prayers for this and pray together for all of you. So right now, especially in this process, we're also very much praying for anybody that's discerning if God's calling them to run this program. So supporting in that way as well. So really, really grateful.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you again for joining us. Thank you everyone who joined us today. If you joined late, just another reminder, we did record this and we will be sharing that. If not tomorrow on the Feast of the Assumption, definitely by Friday. Mark and Katie, thank you for your marriage. Thank you for your witness. Thank you for your ministry. And Brandon, as always, thank you for all your work behind the scenes. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. God bless.
God bless you.